So it's a victory for the All Progressives Congress and its flag bearer, Bola Tinubu. Barring all changes at the courts, Tinubu will become Nigeria's next president on May 29, securing another 4 years in power for his party. Arise correspondent Omo Bazwaye looks at his journey to victory.
Tinubu Bola Ahmed of the APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
Now as a president-elect, Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Tinubu snatched victory, defeating his closest challenger, Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and confining the candidates of the Labour Party and the candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, to third and fourth positions, respectively.
To my supporters, I ask you to continue to have faith in the mission that we have articulated. Though those who didn't support me, I ask that you not allow the disappointment of this moment to keep you from realizing the historic national progress we can make by working together.
But Tinubu's path to victory and eventual journey to Nigeria's seat of power was not entirely effortless. It was a painstaking campaign that first saw him clinch the presidential ticket of the ruling All Progressive Congress APC at the Eagle Square in Abuja, as Shiwaju, as he's fondly called, defeated the likes of Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, President of the Nigerian Senate Ahmed Lawal, and former Minister of Transportation Rotimi Amechi, with the likes of former Governor of Akwa Ibom State Godswill Akpabio, former Governor of Ekiti State Kayode Fayemi, and former Governor of Ogun State Ibikunle Amosu stepping down for the strongman of Lagos and Southwest politics. Tinubu was the first to make his intention known, saying that it had always been his lifelong ambition to become Nigeria's president. Yet, there were moments when Tinubu's ambition looked threatened, with speculations that he was not getting all the support he needed from President Muhammadu Buhari. That prompted Tinubu to the famous outburst in Abeokuta, where he declared, "Emi meaning it's my turn." From that moment on, there was no stopping the former governor of Lagos State as he took his presidential campaigns to the nooks and crannies of the country, alongside his running mate and former governor of Borno State, Kashim Shettima, in some of the loudest and forceful political campaigns in Nigeria's political history.
We promise you that we are just beginning to see gradually how we can work hard together and resuscitate the economy of this country.
Sometimes riding against the odds, a Muslim ticket, a currency redesign, and cashless policy, many of his supporters believed were targeted against him. But Tinubu survived all the odds, and today he stands where he has always wanted to be, Nigeria's next president. Omo Bazwaye, Arise News.
President Muhammadu Buhari has declared that Nigerians decided to vote for Bola Ahmed Tinubu and other candidates of the ruling All Progressives Congress in last Saturday's presidential and National Assembly elections because of the high level of development brought about by the present administration. Speaking yesterday while receiving in audience the president-elect and other leaders of the ruling party at his Daura country home in Katsina State, the president, according to a statement issued by presidential spokesperson Malam Garba Shehu, said he was pleased that the people chose the APC and its candidates. By this, Buhari said, the people affirmed their desire that the momentum of development under the current administration continues. Buhari commended APC supporters and the Presidential Campaign Council for the historic win, which he said would never have been possible without discipline, commitment, and hard work. Well, joining us on the show to discuss these stories is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Ifeni. Good morning and welcome to Nigeria Decides 2023.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Mr. Oseni.
Morning, sir.
Yes. Yesterday, of course, the candidate of, the president-elect now received his certificate of return, reaffirming his victory beyond the announcement at the Collation Center yesterday morning. But quickly, of course, things are unfolding. The President Muhammadu Buhari, quickly basking in that victory. And of course, it would have been something else if his party did not win. That would have meant that he had not carried the flag of the party very well in the last 8 years. And a rejection of his party, and many will have blamed him for not performing up to expectation. But whether his performance was up to speed is another matter altogether. But it is good that it is expected that the president will bask in this victory as his party will be continuing in government come May 29. He will be handed over to a member of his party as the next president. That in itself will ensure that there's some continuity of his programs, because don't forget that during the campaigns, many were saying, how is the APC going to campaign based on what has been considered as not so up to the level many expected when President Muhammadu Buhari took over. Nigerians had very high expectations, especially in the areas of taming the insecurity that was in the country, rebuilding the economy, as well as fighting corruption. But on all counts, you cannot give the president very high marks. Of course, there are other areas which the government has been showcasing. So it was also an Herculean task for Ahmed Tinubu to run his campaign on the achievements of the president. Although at a point, his spokespersons, his handlers were saying, look, we have two planks to campaign. One, the achievement of the present government. Two, his records in Lagos. At a point, it was as if he was distancing himself from the president. And when he, at various points, it was as if he was sending some jabs at the president and the handling of some of his policies, talking about they brought the naira from 200 to 700, and many felt he was trying to distance himself. And of course, there was what looked like the president also distancing himself, his cold attitude to the campaign. But of course, the candidate then also made efforts, several visits to the president at the Aso Villa and his Daura country home at various times. And somewhere along the line, the president keyed into the campaign and came out, of course, his office came out with a list of his itinerary on the campaign trail. And he made showing, yes, the level of energy of his campaign, his appearance, is another matter altogether. But the president, all the same, was there to always raise the hand of the APC standard bearer. So the president taking part in this victory, basking that his achievement made this possible. Of course, you cannot take that away from him because there are things the president can show clearly. They talked of the second Niger bridge, which they have touted as a gift. to the people of the Southeast after many years of trying to make that a reality. And recall that in December, of course, the bridge was partially open for those traveling to the Southeast to enjoy and see, have a feel of what this government has given to the people of the Southeast. But of course, that bridge is serving not just the Southeasterners, but all Nigerians who travel between the Southeast and other parts of the country. So, yes, President Buhari taking part of the credit for this victory. However, the president-elect made another speech yesterday after receiving his certificate of return. It was an opportunity for him to call for, it was conciliatory in his approach, talking about the opposition parties that were defeated in this election. However, whether they will respond, because as we heard yesterday from the Labour Party, we are yet to have an official statement from the PDP. The Labour Party will be challenging the result in court. So, talking about inviting others to be part of his journey to rebuilding the economy, to rebuilding education, because yesterday he also emphasized the issue of education once again, which brings to mind what his policy thrusts will look like. Because throughout the campaigns, he was talking about 4 years will be 4 years. Students will get loan, of course, with reference to public universities, which has been in dire straits in the last 4 years. At least in the last 4 years, public universities in the country lost what you consider 2 academic sessions. And a lot will be needed in that area. So when you say 4 years will be 4 years, in reference to the fact that students spend 5 years, 6 years to do a course of 4 years because of the persistent, incessant strike by university lecturers. 4 years not being 4 years is a symptom of greater malady within the public educational system, which the Academic Staff Union of Universities have catalogued over time, and how government will meet these requirements, because it involves huge spending, talking about university revitalization, talking about, of course, end allowances, amongst other issues, ensuring that 26% of the budget is spent on education. What we have now over the years is a far cry from that. So where the money will come from, these are issues the president-elect will tackle head-on when it comes, when he takes over power on May 29. But clearly, he has his work well cut out for him. A lot to do when he assumes office on May 29.
All right. I mean, a lot has been said, Mr. Feni, but I think we need to set some things straight, you know. Leading up to the campaign, there was always that dichotomy of how will the APC campaign. Is it in terms of President Muhammadu Buhari's record, which was not good, you know, to say the very least. And in case we do not forget, President Muhammadu Buhari's record brought a lot of strife, a lot of pain. Yes, you will say some infrastructure was done, but those infrastructures came at a heavy cost. I'm sure you remember the time that a lot of people were even questioning the transport minister then, Rotimi Amechi, about how much was spent on all of these rail lines. And people touted the fact that those contracts were very bogus, over inflated, and the fact that we could have gotten more for the price that we're given. A lot of other controversies, if you remember, was the infamous Kano to Maradi rail line, where a lot of people complained that why is there a need for Kano to Maradi rail line when you look at it deeply, other parts of the country probably needed rail line to be able to open up things. We can also forget cases of incidents. I'm happy of insecurity. I'm happy you talked about the fact that in 2015, a lot of people voted President Muhammadu Buhari, you know, having high expectations that insecurity issues will be fixed, but that was not the case. we had a lot of ordeal, especially from the Kankara boys, which we witnessed right here on television, to the kidnapping on the Kaduna rail and all of that. And the fact that one of the reasons cited for the kidnapping was that a particular security device that ought to be put on the rail line was not put on the rail line because the Ministry of Finance claimed that the companies, that was presented to do that project had a dodgy financial history, that they had not even taken a project of that nature, and all of a sudden they want that kind of inflow. We can't also forget the fact that even collectively, the rail lines and the trains that were bought, they were constantly malfunctioning. You remember the infamous days of, still the days of trains stopping in the middle of the road because of diesel and things like that. And collectively, it was an all-time low for the economy. That all of this came with massive debts. Over 77 trillion plus the ways and means by CBN we have not sorted out. And all of this also came with a level of insincerity because the mass campaign then was that subsidy was a scam. It never existed. And when President Muhammadu Buhari came in, the language changed to under recovery. And it got to a stage that subsidy was gulping a sizable part of our budget. Anyway, I'm excited that Bola Tinubu has said he's going to pull out subsidy, which is the way to go. And we can't also forget the fact that a lot of this came with massive economic implications. A lot of companies left Nigeria, unemployment rate increased. We can't also forget the fact that in about 4 years, the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, and I still challenge them this morning, to be able to release unemployment numbers. In how many quarters now they've not been able to release unemployment numbers? Because the numbers are dismally very bad. And this also came with a high level of inflation that a lot of people have touted Nigeria, that even when we say we have over 21% inflation rate, the truth has to be said that if we are to rejig our inflation basket, it should go over 50%. And we have seen it in the price and the cost of commodities and outlays. A lot of this also came, as regards cross-sectoral growth limiting. Yes, the Buhari administration that will argue that there were some bright spots. The bright spot was pretty much one in terms of cultural, acculturation. Nigerians doing well abroad, putting our culture out there, doing well in sports and the likes, doing well in those things. Also, yes, you can say tech growth, but when you look at it in detail about the tech growth, most of these base funds are still pretty much attracted from foreign investments. So, yes, we have a Ministry of Digital Economy, but when you look at it, there's something I have written about mostly in the tech sector called the Delaware effect. And the Delaware effect still holds sway because, to be able to raise the capital needed for technological growth, companies have, and I'm sure predominantly most of the tech companies doing well, have a registration in Delaware, in America, to be able to get that in. So there's still that ecosystem, and the image, of the country was largely battered, and hence the difficulty in campaigning with President Buhari's record. And that's why we had, the president-elect now trying to campaign with his record in Lagos. But a lot of people will largely even interrogate the records even further. That Lagos has predominantly grown because of the role of the private sector, and these are empirical facts there. That most of the new outlays of growth and development has been pretty much because of the private sectors, real estate developers that open up areas. I mean, one too many times, you would see the effect of real estate developers in even building roads and opening areas. But when you look at it vis-a-vis tax collected, you look at it and say, okay, a lot more can be done in Lagos. And this is the same Lagos that, let's not forget, the Economist Intelligence Unit has knocked on wood for over, 5-6 years back, constantly touted Lagos as one of the worst cities to live in. Now, those are empirical facts. If you've got a counterfact, I think you can send your challenge to the Economic Intelligence Units. And what are the things and the threshold at which they rate cities? Access to public facilities, access to qualitative health care, access to water and sanitary conditions. Let's take water. We all grew up in the days, Mr. Finney, I'm sure the days were even better because you are my Oga at the top. But it looks as though that year on year, the infrastructural condition keeps getting worse off So when you interview people and you talk to them, you hear people that told you that, oh, many years ago, we used to have public water running in Lagos. But the case is different today because almost everybody, if you get in a house, you need to get a borehole. And the question is, even before you dig the borehole, the state government still collects money from you for digging the borehole because they've not been able to provide that service. And you see, year on year, a lot of money is still being pumped in by various World Bank projects to provide water. The sanitary condition is one of them. I mean, we've seen the harmful effect of sanitary condition. One that comes to mind is what I call something that's called the signpost of Lagos, that as you drive into Lagos, the first thing you see is a refuse dump, the Oluchoso dump site. That at some point, because of the kicking of the methane and the decomposition, starts to burn. And that has even caused, economic conditions. What is it called? Environmental conditions hampered. Even things like the air quality, the quality of roads, even the infrastructure that has been done. When you look at these things, they leave a lot to be desired. And that's why a lot of people kept on asking the question, what is going to be the campaign? And when you ask a lot of Lagosians, what has been the state of education? That's why you will see that mostly it is private schools that people go to, thousands of private schools. What has been the state of public health care? Can it compete effectively? You can go to the government hospitals and see for yourself what is going on there. So these are all the factors. But you see, it's a new dawn. And, people still have a chance to be able to redeem themselves. And in setting the agenda, I think that's what we should look at. And I'm sure that in all I have said, I've been able to also enumerate the problems that we have on ground. The problems are a lot, the challenges are a lot. And it's going to be, an uneasy ride for anybody that, becomes president. That has become president in Nigeria today, that's Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Because he will have to think of the solutions to the 77 trillion debt. He's put some solutions in the manifesto. But I know when the rubber hits the road, it's going to be a different case. We just hope that he's not going to spend 6 months clearing Ogi and Stable, like the APC said when they got in. We hope it's going to give us ministers that are going to hit the ground running. We need infrastructural development, but I do not believe that we must have predominant government spending. I think the government spending should be focused on social services like universities and things like that, healthcare, and there should be a collaboration with the private sector as regards infrastructure, as it is done in other parts of the world. Let me yield the floor to Dr. Adi Ayo to speak.
Well, okay, so just like you said, an analysis of President Buhari's speech. Just yesterday, the president-elect, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, had taken a certificate of return alongside his deputy, his vice, Senator Kashim Shettima, and they said they had to go and present it to the president, Muhammadu Buhari, following his impact or perhaps contributions to democracy and how much it helped their party to delivering this victory for the APC and, as they've said, for Nigerians. A few things there. Also, before then, as you see on screen now, the certificate of return had been presented to him by the INEC chairman and the chief returning officer, Professor Mahmoud Yakub. And during his speech, this time, away from the speech he gave yesterday when he was first announced, during his victory speech, where was a lot of the prepared speech and spoke from his heart, and so a number of things we could, some people had looked deeper into. But the first speech he gave following following his receipt of the certificate was quite what you would hear a president-elect say. A number of things he highlighted, thanked, of course, his supporters, and also called for collaboration and working with his non-supporters, saying that there's a nation to build. And with you have enumerated a number of issues. Anyone, as we said, even prior to elections, who would become president on who will be sworn in as president on May 29, has their work cut out for them. There's a poverty challenge with 133 million Nigerians moving into poverty. There's a we have an economic crisis, unemployment rate, we have the exchange rate, and a number of factors. So, as you rightly have mentioned, the president has his work cut out for them. In fact, some people said they didn't envy whoever was going to take on that role, as the person would most probably be quite unpopular in the first few weeks, first few months. They have a subsidy decision to make by, within the first month of taking office. So a number of challenges there. Therefore, it is within reason, or well within reason, for him to have stated there that everyone had to come on board, whether or not you supported him during the campaign. But for the sake of Nigeria, let's all come together to work. He said his heart and door is open. Again, just emphasizing the point that he was ready to be a president who would work with all stakeholders. He also highlighted some key points from his manifesto. I'm sure in the next few hours and coming days, we will again take a critical look at his manifesto and begin to see how he would deliver according to the details and, of course, the timeline for some of them which he has set and the numbers specifically. Now, to the point of the president saying that he would that he had won based on the achievement of his own administration. Before then, a curious thing is that the president has still remained silent on some of the issues raised. I mean, he mentioned it in his speech yesterday, but in terms of his statement yesterday, I'll quote what he had said, what was reported that he had said. So on receiving the president-elect and the VP-elect, he had said, my good Lord, fantastic. Of course, quite ecstatic following the win of his party and the presidential candidate and now president-elect that he had supported. However, he said, we're very lucky. There were no problems, no bloodshed, no accidents. We have God Almighty to thank for this. And I believe that a number of Nigerians and international observers would challenge this statement. In terms of there being no problems, it would be great to understand the kind of problems he was referring to. Because if he were referring to challenges encountered by INEC or perhaps the electoral process in its entirety, a number of people would talk about the issues that we have hammered on around BVAS, around the challenging the credibility of this election. Some opposition parties had come out to speak about this, and beyond sentiments saying that because they were in the opposition, of course, they would want to speak when they were not winning. International observers from the EU had come out to talk about the lack of credibility and some areas that could certainly have seen improvement in this election. So I believe that perhaps as president now, speaking as president, he ought to have at least acknowledged those issues and speak to them. In fact, at some point, the PDP candidate had asked the president to step in to speak up, and the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, had also called on him to remember his legacy and speak up at this point. So he hasn't quite done that satisfactorily. And then he said no bloodshed. This is contrary to some reports of violence reported across the country. We had reports from Kano State. We had reports from, even in Lagos State here, we had reports across the country. So for him to say there was no bloodshed is also one that we must also look at critically, whether he was observing this particular elections or he didn't get enough, the adequate briefing to be able to speak accurately about it. And then, so we understand the need to make a speech to congratulate your party, but it's also important that until May 29, 2023, President Muhammadu Buhari is still the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And so whilst he's rejoicing with his party candidate and party, he must also speak to the concerns of Nigerians, and Nigerians are waiting. Now, with what you said with regards to the issues, I won't go deeper into that. Like I said, we have a whole lineup for you today to discuss that and for us to really look at that. But the call on the party and the president is to ensure that, as they have said, they'll work with all stakeholders, and very importantly, Nigeria must be the focus. But first, we must remember that the president has to speak to some of these issues.
Okay, 5 days after the election, February 25, and everybody is focused on the presidential election and the outcome, and that's understandable, because the president of Nigeria, is the main symbol of the democratic process, and it's been given enormous powers under the Constitution. So the outcome of the presidential election is definitely of interest. Now, what is that popular saying? That failure is an orphan,
but success has
fathers, brothers, sisters,
success
and
has,
cousins.
has many relatives. And that's precisely what we have seen. So you can't blame the APC and the presidential candidate being triumphant, having been declared winner of the election by the Independent National Electoral Commission. Now, in terms of the speeches that have been made so far by the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, I think consistently, about 3 major speeches now, he has been able to strike majorly the right notes, thanking Nigerians, expressing gratitude, saying that this is quite a major moment in the life of a man and also in our democratic existence as a country. Of course, it is a major moment in his political career. A man who came, from almost nothing and became something and became a godfather and became a hero and achieved the dream of becoming president of Nigeria. Those who want to really drive home the point will say he has succeeded where Chief Obafemi Awolowo, the icon, the major icon of Nigerian politics, did not succeed. They will claim that, yes, he had equated himself to Chief MKO Abiola, and that whereas the MKO Abiola process was truncated, he has been able to achieve in that particular regard. It can also be congratulated that those who were saying that the presidency should come to the south of Nigeria, he has become the major symbol for achieving that aspiration after 8 years of power being in the northern part of the country. So these are basic things, at personal and also at ethnic level, individual and collective level, even if, at ethnic level, that he can claim to have achieved. Number 3 is a point about religion. When he announced a Muslim ticket, we all argued, including President Company, that, look, 2023 is not 1993, because part of the argument was that, in 1993 we had a Muslim ticket. We said the country had changed. But now he's been able to, achieve the position with that Muslim ticket. So part of the conversation would then have to be, what changed? I noticed that yesterday, the chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria in Lagos State, I think his name is Bishop Adigbite, was sounding so, eloquent about how Tinubu is not going to Islamize Nigeria. If he could not Islamize his own wife for 40 years, nobody should worry about Islamization. So you see that even the Christian Association of Nigeria in Lagos State is beginning to shift. So this is my point about success, having many relatives. Success having many relatives. Yesterday, the former governor of Ekiti State, Peter Ayofayoshi, was quoted as saying he's no longer in PDP and that he has left PDP, and he was congratulating Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The vice president of Nigeria, Yemi Osinbajo, professor, he had been very lukewarm about the campaign. But all of a sudden, it was shown up in the congratulatory tray. He has not only issued a statement to say that, what Nigeria needs is a progressive ideals of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. In fact, he was present at the collection of the certificate of return. And so you are likely to have more of that. Even those who opposed Bola Ahmed Tinubu coming around congratulating him and everybody jumping on the bandwagon of that train. That's one thing that I have observed. Of course, El Rufai, governor of Kaduna State, also issued a statement. But of course, in the last moments of the campaign, he stood in the same corner with Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So you cannot blame them for savoring the beauty, the euphoria, of the fact that they have won. 2, INEC presented its certificate of return yesterday. The promptitude with which that was done I think it's remarkable. It was as if, in fact, that certificate of return had been prepared, the speed with which all of that was done. And you could see, if you look at the subtext, some politics there, not to create room for too much, anxiety or speculation. Immediately after the announcement, they quickly handed over the certificate to the candidate of the APC, who had been declared president-elect. I thought in previous elections, sometimes it used to take like a week before the certificate of return would be presented. But this one came oven ready and was immediately handed over. And not trying to lose the momentum, the president-elect immediately went to Daura to thank the president. And the president, as reported in one of the papers today, yes, as Ayo quoted, was say, oh, my good Lord, we are lucky. Oh, there's no incident, there's no accident, no bloodshed. We have God Almighty to thank for this. The president said, well, no bloodshed, no incident, no accident. Some people must have been lying to the president of Nigeria. And this is part of the problem with this country. People in high places, they get told a lot of lies by sycophants, by people who are not doing their job. Because indeed, one of the major issues in this election has been the violence. Who is going to explain to Ifidi Bina Jennifer, the woman who was knifed in the face, Surulere, and her face was bandaged, and blood was dripping from her face as she eventually tried to vote? Is that not an incident? Is that not bloodshed? Who is going to explain to all those people who were set ablaze in parts of the country as a result of the election, or the people who were killed before the election and during the election, or the persons who were brutalized when ballot boxes were snatched and set ablaze in Kogi State, in Niger State, in Edo State, in Delta, in Rivers, in Lagos State here, where some people even had the effrontery to go to the polling booth to warn voters to behave themselves and not vote for certain other parties, giving strong signals of voter suppression and voter intimidation. If anyone wants to doubt that, how about the fact that INEC officials arrived very late? The same INEC officials that could not mobilize election materials that came late, in some cases in Arochukwu, Abia State, they arrived at 2:30 p.m. when the election was supposed to have been ending. Is that not an incident? But what I find curious about it is that the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, now president-elect, himself repeated the same thing. I said, oh, no incident, no accident. Well, some people are either gaslighting us or they have not been properly apprised of the reality. But what I find, beyond the fact that, the president-elect has been conciliatory, he has been saying the right things. Well, when he went to Daura, there was something he said that was not right. He thanked the president that, in fact, the president demonstrated loyalty to the party. That after voting, that he displayed his ballot paper. Now, that's not something to be commended. The president was dead wrong. It amounted to the president himself violating the law. And we have quoted it here. Section 122 of the Electoral Act 2022 talks about secret balloting. In fact, it prescribes punishment. A fine of 100,000 naira or imprisonment for 3 months or both. But who is going to take the president of Nigeria to court? He enjoys immunity under Section 308 of the Constitution. And the interpretation is that the president was campaigning on election day by brandishing his ballot paper. He was sending a message to deep state to say, this is where I stand in this matter. Will anybody, after all this is said and done, do a proper audit of what the implication of that will be? And the president was not alone. The Attorney General of the Federation does not enjoy immunity under Section 308. Only 74 persons enjoy immunity under that, and the Attorney General is not included. The Attorney General also brandished his own ballot paper, and pictures have been provided, out there. The Attorney General of the Federation is the chief law officer of the Federation. So these are some of the issues that we have had out there. But already, now having been declared president-elect, you can see from the protocols that the security around the president-elect has changed immediately. You look at the formation of the security around him, it's different. He's already become, somebody to be looked after by the Nigerian state, to be protected, by the Nigerian state. I could see in those pictures the protocols kicking in. He will have moved into the residence for the president-elect, and he will be briefed from now on a daily basis, the same way that the president is briefed, by all the agencies of government, even if he does not take a decision. So that's the extent of what has happened. However, the only other thing to consider is that the PDP, I thought I heard someone saying the PDP has not defined its position. Dino Melaye issued a statement yesterday in which he was saying that the PDP will reclaim the mandate. And the PDP is not alone in this regard. The New Nigeria People's Party yesterday afternoon held a press conference. They had a 7-point complaint, and they said they too will go to court. Now the Labour Party, speaking through Baba Dati Ahmed, running mate to Mr. Peter Obi, has also said they too will challenge the outcome of the election. And he told us that Mr. Peter Obi will speak later to the issue. Other political parties have also registered their protests. So what is likely to happen henceforth, herefrom? We're likely to have a situation whereby, okay, the battle goes to the court. But as I said yesterday, anybody who has been in politics will know that, look, it's better to win first and allow the other people to be the ones to complain. The other subtext of that is that Nigerians don't trust the judiciary. Since the return to democracy in 1999, has anybody seen any example of any presidential election in this country, or the 6 before the 7th one, that has been overturned? It has never happened, no matter how controversial. In fact, in this particular case, voter turnout is the lowest since return to civilian rule in 1999. Voter turnout in this election is about 27%. Oh. If you look at the percentage of people who voted for the president-elect, they are less than 10% of registered voters. Total number of registered voters, 93.4, right? Mm-hmm. So if you score 8.7, that's less than 10%. I don't know whether my mathematics is correct. So that's less than 10%. If you take the total number of voters who went out, well, maybe the voter turnout is as a result of the failure, incompetence of INEC, not necessarily voter apathy, because there was a lot of enthusiasm. People, yeah. But when you add up the figures, the people who came out of the 87.2 million that purportedly collected PVCs, although we have had to question that, entire total about 25.6. We had over about 35% of the populace voting as recently as 2019. Voter turnout was poor. So the issues that will still have to be resolved will have to be the infractions, the failures, the flagrant demonstration of incompetence, inefficiency in the conduct of the February 25 presidential and National Assembly elections in Nigeria. Nobody is talking about the National Assembly elections as That was the point from which I started. Because the National Assembly elections, the results were uploaded real time. And yet, the failure to do so with the presidential election, some people are rationalizing it up and down. I think one, big, way forward will be when the matter goes to court. Maybe we will learn certain lessons. But there are also certain lessons that are out there. And those lessons will relate to how INEC is able to do a very quick audit and make sure that the failures that have been observed in the February 25 Saturday election are not repeated on March 11. Because if you listen, there are people who are already protesting and who are saying, in fact, March 11 will be a big showdown in Nigeria. And that's why we keep appealing to people to go through the rule of law, be peaceful, calm down, but the only way that all of that can be realized is for the institutions to wake up and to do their job. We don't want a blowout on March 11 because the way everybody is now raising their shoulders and saying we will fight to finish on March 11. Please, don't fight to finish. Some of us are in this country that like peace. Yes. And I would still like to enjoy our pepper soup and jollof rice in peace.
Let me just give you a fun historical fact. Yes. Do you know that to show you how abysmal the numbers is in these elections, that in 1979 elections, the winner got about 5.8 million votes. The winner in these elections just got 2 or 3 million votes more than the winner in 1979 elections, that's Shehu Shagari. But let me shock you with the biggest fun fact. In 1983 elections, Shehu Shagari got 12 million votes. So the winner of the 1983 elections got more votes than the winner of the 2023 elections 40 years after. So are you telling me that there was no population growth, no human growth over the years?
I was going to ask the population in 1983. Definitely a lot lower.
Definitely a lot lower. So the winner of the 1983 elections got more votes than the winner of the 2023 elections 40 years after. And I bet, if as a 1993 census, Dr. Abati, I think Nigerian population was 88.5 million. Right?
Now they say we are over 200.
And now they say we are over 200 million. And the winner of the elections then in 83, which Nigeria probably will be about 80 million people then, got 12 million votes. But now the winner in 2023 got just 8 million votes. Speaks volumes.
Okay, Rufai, so much for the progress in democracy. However, I don't think we should predict what will happen at the courts, because Ruben was saying that since 1999, no election has been upturned by the Supreme Court. We don't want to predict what will happen at the courts. We expect that the judges, like Caesar's wife, they will live above board. I refer you to Kenya not too long ago, where the Supreme Court of that country, despite the fact that the incumbent was supporting a candidate, of course they looked at the case on its merit and they ruled that they should go for an election. So there is an African precedent that presidential election can be upturned and the candidates ordered to go back for another election. Then INEC, I don't want you to read too much into the speed with which they presented the certificate of return, because all you need is a calligraphist who can just enter one of the candidates' name into the winner in this case, as declared by INEC, into the certificate. They must have produced it, just waiting to put the name. So I don't want to read too much into the speed with which that was done. But I noticed that the INEC chairman was like somebody in a hurry. Even when he was when he was receiving the results, at one point he said, please don't repeat the figures. Just mention it once. Don't do it 2 times. He wanted to, as if he wanted to get this assignment done, declare the winner and wash his hands, as it were. But looking at the history, because when you talked of what Chief Obafemi Awolowo did not achieve, becoming the president of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it must put there, yes, a man from very humble background. It must be stated that when Bola Ahmed Tinubu got the ticket of Alliance for Democracy to run as governor, he did not win that primaries. Somebody else did. But the followers of Awo, who are top persons of Afenifere, decided, let's give it to this boy. That was how they were putting it there, because it was very useful in the struggle, in the Nadeco struggle. And of course, just to put that in record, that his first attempt to become governor, he did not win the ticket of Alliance for Democracy. Somebody else did. But the elders, in their wisdom, decided that let's give it to Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So he was not born a godfather. He did not become a godfather in his first day in politics. Godfathers gave him the opportunity. I just felt I should add that, because this sing-song, Bola Ahmed Tinubu made so many people as if nobody made him. He dropped from heaven. Okay. It's not in a folklore. Yeah. I should just add that.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Feni.